Welcome everybody to another episode. So glad to see you and so glad to know you are back. So we spent the previous series on the causes of the French Revolution that were mostly based on financial causes, financial problems. And after a brief pause with the history of teeth through time, we're back here to complete a whole new series that is going to be really exciting. You know, history is not only a matter of remembering dates. History, the meaning of history is to remember why certain events happened, why certain people made decisions that changed the fate of millions of people throughout their land, throughout that time. And so it's important to know the motivations, and this is what I try to do every time. This is my goal, to understand and help people reflect on the motivations so we can gain some lessons and we can learn from history, learn from the mistakes of the past so we can evolve and hopefully be better individuals in the future and make better decisions. Because if we keep on repeating the same mistakes over and over, well, it's not going to be better. It's not going to be a better society. So after we spent, in our previous series, we spent time about a century understanding the reasons behind the building up of the French Revolution. The reasons were mostly financial, but as we will see in this series, the reasons are more than financial. There is social upheaval. There is chaos. There is something is boiling underneath, and the people are tired and they want to change. If you haven't seen that series, just go ahead and look in each episode and see all the financial and economic policies that each economist came in throughout the reign of different kings and try to change the situation and make it better. However, they did not succeed in doing so. The French Revolution was not a single event, but a turning point in world history, a struggle that shattered the world order, the old order, and forever changed the way people thought about power, rights, and society. From the streets of Paris to the royal court at Versailles, the revolution unfolded through hunger, hope, defiance, and violence. I've chosen to break the story into a full series so we can take the time to explore the events and the motivations that shaped it. By slowing down, the aim is to make this complex history more digestible, while also giving space for reflection, both on the choices made by the people who lived through it and on the way these moments still echo in our world today. Across 14 episodes, we will follow the ideas, characters, and turning points that transformed France, just like the storming of the Bastille of July 14th, 1789. 14 episodes, July 14th. There is something to say about it, which ignited the revolution. These episodes will guide us through the pivotal moments that sparked a fire of change. In the 14th and final episode, we'll pause to reflect on the revolution's legacy and the questions it still leaves behind. Our story begins in France, on the edge of collapse. Years of war, rising debt, and social inequality had pushed the kingdom to a breaking point. While the royal court lived in splendor at Versailles, ordinary people struggled with hunger, unemployment, and rising taxes. The old system, where privileges belonged to the few and hardship to the many, was crumbling. In the streets of Paris, anger was growing. The cry for change would soon erupt into action, and the people began to demand not just relief, but a complete transformation of their world. This is where the French Revolution truly begins. Picture this: you're struggling to afford bread, while the king hosts lavish feasts in a glittering palace. Then he demands higher taxes to fund his debts. Could that push a nation to rebel? In France 1789, it did, igniting the French Revolution. Welcome to episode 1, where we'll uncover the forces that tore a kingdom apart. By the 1780s, France was a nation divided. Society was split into 3 estates: the clergy, who owned vast wealth; the nobles, exempt from taxes, yet holding power; and the third estate, everyone else, from merchants to peasants, who bore the burden of supporting the kingdom. The bourgeoisie, educated and ambitious, craved political influence to match their wealth. Meanwhile, failed harvests left peasants starving. And in Paris, the poor faced skyrocketing bread prices, fueling desperations. Tensions simmered, with many questioning why the system favored so few. The breaking point? A crippling financial crisis. King Louis XVI's government was deep in debt, drained by extravagant court life at Versailles and costly wars, including support for America's fight for independence. As an absolute monarch, Louis could raise taxes without consent, a power England's king had lost to Parliament. But when he tried to tax the nobles and commoners alike to save the treasury, outrage spread. This clash between a bankrupt crown and a fed-up nation set the stage for revolution. France's financial troubles deepened over decades. In the early 1700s, Louis XIV, known as the Sun King, faced severe challenges. His costly wars had exhausted the treasury, plunging the kingdom into hardship. To sustain his court, he increased his taxes, placing a heavy burden on peasants already struggling to survive. He briefly questioned the impact on his people until his confessors shared their striking opinion from scholars at the University of Paris, the Sorbonne. All wealth in France rightfully belonged to the king. Taxes, they argue, were merely his due. With this justification, Louis raised taxes further, untroubled by dissent. Throughout the 18th century, public debt continued to mount. When Louis XVI ascended the throne in 1774, he initially inspired hope for change. Determined to address the crisis, he discovered a daunting reality. The kingdom's budget deficit was vast, driven by wars and extravagant spending at court. Seeking solutions, Louis appointed leading economists to his government. Yet, much like today, their advice conflicted. Some urged reducing expenses to curb the debt. Others believed spending more would restore economic confidence. Despite these efforts, no strategy succeeded. By 1789, Louis faced an empty treasury and overwhelming debt. Unable to solve the crisis alone, he made a historic decision. He convened the Estates General, a national assembly of clergy, nobles, and commoners untouched for over 170 years. This choice marked a turning point, setting the stage for the French Revolution. The Estates General was a rare gathering, born in the 14th century, where France's 3 estates met to advise the king. The first estate was the clergy, the second the nobles, and the third the commoners, everyone from merchants to peasants, unlike England's parliament, which met regularly and held real power. The Estates General had no authority and convened only when the king allowed. Its last meeting was in 1614, under Louis XIII. For 175 years, it vanished. During that time, France's kings tightened their grip. Louis XIV, the Sun King, ruled as God's chosen, his word absolute. Decisions on taxes, laws, everything came to him alone, with no need for the people's input. The Estates General faded into memory, leaving the nation without a voice. By 1788, that silence could no longer hold. Louis XVI faced a kingdom in crisis. The treasury was empty, harvests had failed, and unrest swept the cities. Desperate for new taxes to save the monarchy, he summoned the Estates General after nearly 2 centuries. It was a bold move meant to restore order. Instead, it gave the people, especially the Third Estate, the commoners, a chance to speak. At first, hope filled the air. Everyone believed this assembly could fix France's problems, but that hope carried a spark. one that would soon ignite events like the storming of the Bastille, as the people's voice grew too loud to ignore. We will delve into this later in detail, but was the storming of the Bastille truly a turning point in 1789? Or did its importance grow only later? It's a fair question. Some historic moments shine brighter in hindsight. But the Bastille's fall was different. It shook France immediately, proving the people could challenge the king. By July 1789, the Estates General had unraveled. The Third Estate, representing commoners from merchants to laborers, refused to stay silent. On June 17, they declared themselves the National Assembly, claiming to speak for the nation's will. King Louis XVI resisted, trying to block their progress. One day, the deputies arrived to find their meeting hall locked, officially for repairs, they were told. On the 3rd, they gathered in the nearby tennis court, vowing to draft a new constitution. By July 9th, they became the Constituent Assembly, determined to reshape France's laws. The king hesitated. His advisors pressed him to send troops to crush this defiance with force. Soldiers gathered around Paris and Versailles, heightening fears of an attack. Meanwhile, bread grew scarce. On July 13, hungry Parisians rioted, storming bakeries and warehouses in desperation. The city's merchants, leading the revolution's charge, grew alarmed. They formed the National Guard to protect their gains and maintain order, but they needed weapons. The Bastille, a fortress and prison, held muskets and gunpowder. On July 14th, a crowd marched to seize it. When the governor refused to yield, the assault began. Within hours, the Bastille fell. Its governor was killed and his head raised on a pike. The fortress, long a symbol of royal power, was torn apart. The news stunned Louis. On July 15, he addressed the National Assembly, promising to withdraw troops and later adopting the red, white, and blue cockade, a nod to the revolution's colors. In the countryside, word of Paris's defiance sparked chaos. Peasants rose up, attacking noble estates in what became known as the Great Fear. By early August, the National Assembly responded, abolishing feudal privileges and dismantling the old order. Well, the storming of the Bastille in July 1789 was more than a riot. It was a signal that France's old order could not hold. From the ashes of a broken system, the people's voice grew stronger, challenging a monarchy that had ruled for centuries. In this episode, we've seen how debt, hunger, and a revived Estates General set the stage for revolution, culminating in a hope for reform that now teetered toward greater upheaval. What did you think about this turning point? Share your thoughts below in the comments. Subscribe to join us for episode 2, where we'll explore how the revolution unfolded, testing France's resolve. Like and share to spread this journey through history. Thank you for following up with this episode, and I will see you next time. Bye.